What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Backside Groundballs podcast, where we are coming to you in person on the campus of University of Delaware in Newark, Delaware. We have a full day jam-packed with a facility tour, but first we're lucky enough to be joined by recruiting coordinator Bryan Torresani. Bryan Torresani is entering his first season here at the University of Delaware with the Fightin' Blue Hens, previously at Arcadia University. Coach Torresani, thank you for joining us on the podcast.
Trevor, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure again.
Again, yes. I mean, for our listeners that have been around for a while, they know that this is our third time on a recorded platform sitting down and talking. We also had one where we did a nice little Google Meet for TPA families and gave them some information about the recruiting process. So my first question for you is, we sat down over Zoom 2021 summer. Did you ever envision that we'd be sitting in the locker room here in Newark, Delaware, talking with microphones and cameras in front of you when that day went down?
Life comes at you fast, I guess, from our first meeting to now. But both doing some cool things and have moved on to bigger and better, I guess. So
definitely. And I know everybody who has followed you in your career is super fired up for you to be here. So kind of go into, what made this transition. Obviously, Arcadia, I think I know probably just as well as anybody, was a great situation for you, great situation for your family. Dad was on staff for years, right around the corner from where you grew up. What kind of made this situation at Delaware so appealing to you that made it worth the, change of scenery and adjustment in life, quite frankly, for you to join on staff here?
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of ways I guess I could go with that answer, but we're going to see a lot of it today here in a little bit, and in terms of the investment that the University of Delaware has made in athletics and is making in the baseball program, facilities wise, and obviously moving up in conferences and things like that, and so that certainly made it appealing. The university itself being so well recognized and attractive for players and really any student to come and get their college education, was a big piece of it. It's a name brand type of institution. I had known Coach Mamula for the better part of last 15, 16 years or so, from when he was at Westchester and I was getting my start. And so I followed his career through the last little while, and we've stayed somewhat in touch and were able to reconnect when he got back in the area a couple summers ago. Which was great. And so, once I started to go through the process, last summer with him and hearing about his vision for the program and the places that he wants to take Delaware baseball, honestly, it was kind of an easy decision at that point. As much as I love Arcadia and the things we did there and the people there, especially, I think for my own personal growth, development, and career, that this was a no-brainer for me, and I'm happy I did it after being here for a few months.
Yeah, of course, and obviously it's definitely been a transition. I think that we have talked about that a little bit. So what's we'll stay more on the positive side of transitioning in more to an assistant coach role after a fall. Obviously, your responsibilities have changed. Less talking about academics and more talking about ball. Obviously, spending more time on the field with guys and being able to be that resource for them. What's been some of the positives that you've really liked in your transition from being a head coach to being an assistant guy, now being able to focus on some different parts of the game?
Yeah, definitely. It's been it definitely is an adjustment. I was a head coach for 11 years, so you kind of get set in your ways a little bit, and that's been one of the things that's been a positive for me, is being here and being able to learn from Mams and from Coach Kalina and from Coach Ludman and working with different people. I'm somebody that I appreciate trying to learn and get better and grow, and I didn't even realize, I think at the time, that I was getting a little bit stale, I think, at Arcadia, not even intentionally, nothing crazy outside the ordinary, just some things I learned here and saw here that have really opened my eyes to some new ways to do things different ways. So that part's been great. Being able to get in the weeds a little bit more on the field. I mean, it's a bad excuse to say you don't have time for things, but as a head coach, you have to prioritize, and some things for me fell a little further down the priority list in terms of some of the on-the-field stuff, and I'm glad to be back doing some of those things. I got to work really hands-on with the catchers this fall, which I haven't done in a while, and I really love that part of the game and working with those guys, and we had a great fall together, and helping Mams with the hitting was really eye-opening too. So I'm just glad to be on the field a little bit more, with the players on a daily basis and getting my hands dirty.
Yeah, so I'm curious a lot about obviously roles and responsibilities. You mentioned a couple things there, and I definitely want to talk a little bit about the catching experience because at Arcadia you worked with the catchers, but it definitely wasn't the focal point of what you spent during your day. But we'll start on the hitting side, and obviously Coach Mams has a ton of experience working with professional hitters now across Major League Baseball. What are kind of some of the things that have challenged you to learn and maybe change the way you might coach, right, and handle those situations and handle practice and how you kind of build your offensive philosophy? What is kind of the things that Coach Mams has kind of influenced you in certain ways?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think baseball especially is such an environmentally driven game, right? So like everywhere you play, the environment's different. It's not like basketball where the court's 94 feet, the rim's 10 feet off the ground, the foul line's 15 feet from the rim. Like
it's indoors.
It's
never,
indoors.
You don't have to
right.
deal with wind or cold weather.
Exactly. You play at Arcadia at Skip Wilson Field. The wind's blowing in constantly. It's a big yard. It's hard to hit the ball out of the yard. You come to Delaware. The wind's usually blowing out to right. It's a reachable yard. We have a different level of athlete here, generally a bigger, stronger guy that can hit for more power. And so the shift from being more of a sort of lower sights, line drive, manufacture runs, be able to threaten maybe with some doubles and gappers to, no, we want to leave the yard and we want to do that on a consistent basis. And I think the biggest thing I learned this fall from Mams is like there's a way to challenge hitters and make batting practice enjoyable and fun, and not just home run derby, because I think that's counterproductive and can lead to swings and misses and strikeouts, where, yes, we talk about hitting for doubles and home runs, but he also does a really good job of laying out how to do that, how to do it the right way, and he makes it fun. And the one example I'll give you is I remember my first time throwing BP in one of our skill groups in the fall. And one of our rules is we want our guys to watch balls go over the fence. Like we think that's like
it feels good.
It feels good.
Yeah,
it looks good. We want guys to have that feeling. And of course, as somebody that's thrown BP their whole life and just you kind of throw and guy hits one good and you throw. And Mams multiple times in the background like, hey coach, let him watch it. Hey coach, let him watch it. And like that was kind of a change for me in terms of just it wasn't something we had really ever done in the past. So I enjoy that piece of it. I think the philosophy fits our personnel. It fits our ballpark, and it proved itself out last year. They averaged over 7 runs a game and did some really good things offensively.
Well, and I think the coolest thing, and you can probably speak on more detail, and this is probably something that we haven't spoken of, is what worked at Arcadia to a certain extent probably works here as well, in the fact of sometimes thinking oppo gap is what allows you to pull a baseball and not hook it fair, especially when we have a crosswind blowing out to right. Like you can't have any side spin that's going to hook it around the pole. We want that thing to stay fair and hold it. And sometimes guys, especially as guys think about hitting the ball in the air more, sometimes you have to recalibrate that guy to miss on top. And that's what, again, the example was, when we were in regionals against Oswego, for whatever reason, Memorial Day weekend, Skip Wilson, wind starts blowing out, it's warm ball. NCAA balls have a little bit more juice than the diamonds that we were using, and you get there and we're facing a guy with a little high spin heater. We start talking about missing on top, a guy leaves the yard, right? So all those things that might be the foundation of what works, of like kind of lowering your sights, can pay off for teams that hit for power. Is that something that you've kind of realized, that as guys try to chase more elevation, sometimes they have to flatten out and find that middle ground?
Yeah, definitely. I think you have to build your team and your offense to win games in multiple settings, right? We talked about the environment already. There are going to be days we're playing at different fields, the wind's blowing in, and we have some ways that we train where we do practice that, for those specific circumstances. But, at the end of the day, I think hitting the ball hard consistently is what wins. Trying to have a middle of the field approach, and that's what we talk about with our guys, which I'm sure Mams mentioned in your talk with him, is like we want guys to hit the ball in the middle of the field, and we hope they can catch it out in front on the upswing a little bit and hit it to their pull side gap in the air, because that is analytically that's where the power numbers are. That's what we want on a more consistent basis. But I mean, heck, like I said, the wind blows out to right field here on a lot of days, and we have some righties that are good at letting the ball get deeper, still getting it elevated to that side and hitting it out of the yard over the scoreboard the other way. So, there's different ways you can train it, but I think if you can build your team to win in any setting, then you have a chance to be pretty good. Definitely.
And I think that's awesome. And again, that's what continuous growth, right? That's something that we heard Coach Mams speak passionately about with our sit down with him, was emphasizing growth. And I think from a coaching standpoint, even us in life, we can kind of highlight that ability to continue to grow. So let's talk a little bit about the catchers and that experience. That's a position you played in college, so it's one that I know you've always been passionate about. But as you mentioned several times, being a head coach, you have to prioritize. And, the position that has 2 or 3, maybe 4 guys, if you're lucky, isn't exactly the 40 guys that are out on the field on a daily basis that you're trying to practice for. So what was it like getting back in the weeds with your position that you love and are passionate about? And what were some of the things that you were able to emphasize and highlight with those guys?
Yeah, definitely. Well, it's such a unique position, right? Like, you can't just take somebody and put him behind the plate like you can in left field or in some other spots, maybe on the field. So it's a specialized position where, a guy has to want to do it. A guy has to want to be good at it. Generally speaking, as a catcher, you're going to lose swings in practice. You're catching a lot of bullpens. Like, it's a different animal than being an infielder or being an outfielder. So, I think having our guys embrace that part of it, is super important. I think, kind of the in vogue thing right now with catchers is receiving and receiving metrics. And I think it's been proven out that the more balls you can turn into strikes, the better chance you have to win. And so that's where a lot of our focus was, throughout the fall. Our guys did a really good job of in early work and pre-inter squad and things like that. And, I was able to turn around some evaluations of them off of video, after each inter squad. And we had a grading system on receiving and blocking and throwing. And I think they appreciated, listen, anything you measure, you're going to master type of thing. And, so we ranked them each week and we watched some video together, and guys really started to buy into some certain areas of where they can get better receiving. And, I told him when I first started working with him, like, you can have good pitching and bad catching. And if you have that, you have bad pitching, and you can have average pitching and great catching. And if you have that, you're going to have good pitching. Like, that's where we want to be a net positive behind the plate for our pitchers. I think sometimes catchers can fall into the trap of, measuring their game only by their bat, and they have such an impact on a pitch-to-pitch basis on winning and losing as a defender. And I think our guys, the 4 guys that I worked with this fall, did a really good job buying into that, and we saw some growth.
Yeah, and definitely. And one of the things that I think is really cool about being able to work with a position group is, how many catchers do you guys have on the?
We have 4 right now.
4. So how nice has it been to be able to just sit down and crunch video with a guy and not have to worry about taking care of 40 guys and just being able to build a relationship with one? And how much progress have you felt that's been able to accelerate, because you're not worried about building an offense around 19 guys? It's, hey, how can we get our 4 guys to be the best catchers they can be?
Yeah, I mean, it was really eye-opening, for the fall with the smaller roster and me working with sort of a drilled down subsection of our roster, how quickly development can happen when you can pay attention to the details, can show guys areas that they're doing, of what they're doing well, because I think that's important. Guys need to see themselves playing well, because that builds confidence, and then taking a look at some deficiencies and then making a plan for attacking those things, right? Just to have the time to be able to put that stuff together and then go out and execute it and watch guys, get better and grow in the process. Like, that's the rewarding part as a coach, and hopefully we can carry that into the spring and across the whole roster, but especially with our catching core, which I'm confident we can. I mean, we have a really good group of 4 guys, confident to have any of the 4 of them back there right now, which I think says a lot. Our pitchers, I think are comfortable with all 4 guys back there, so we're in a good spot.
That's awesome. And it's such a big piece about catching is also obviously controlling the pitching staff and handling the pitching staff. And I know one of your major responsibilities is going to be scouting and doing scouting reports and some of the things like that. So obviously it was a fall. How many games were you able to get this fall?
I want to say we played like 11 or so inter squads and then 2 outside competitions, something like that.
So it's not the full 50-game shebang that you're going to be in for in the regular season, but it is something that obviously being able to put together some scouting reports. What are some of the things that Coach Mams and Coach Kalina want to see in the scouting report so that they're able to build the game plan around, and what are the things that you like to highlight when you put those together?
Yeah, it's kind of a collaborative effort, which is a lot of what we do here with our staff at Delaware, which I think is what makes us good, is that, we're using everybody's expertise. So when we put together a scouting report, Mams is focused, as the hitting coach, is focused mainly on the opposing pitchers. Casey is focused mostly on the opposing hitters. And then myself and Chris Ludman, we're focused a little bit more on the defensive positioning. So There's a lot more video available at Division I than there's been in the past in my career. So, we're going back through old video now this time of year in the off season, charting balls in play, making decisions on kind of where we're going to play our defense against certain hitters. And I think that boils down to there's only so much you can control in this game, right? So one of the things as a coach that I do feel passionately about is one of the biggest things you can control on defense is where you're positioned. And I think that can go overlooked at times. But if you pay attention, if you do enough preparation, I think we would see that at Arcadia, we would oftentimes be in better spots than other teams and be able to make plays that other teams couldn't get to. And so that's going to be my main focus throughout the year is just making sure our defense is in the best spot possible. Certainly I don't have a crystal ball. I can't predict the future. I guarantee you I'm going to move a guy 2 steps to his right and the guy's going to hit the ball right where he was a pitch before, but that's part of being that's part of doing this. So it'll be a collaborative effort to get the whole scout ready and relay that to the guys, but it should be fun.
One of the funnest things sitting next to you when we were in the dugout together when it came to defensive positioning was your creativity, for lack of a better term. And I think some people don't really think about baseball, especially defensive positioning, as being creative, right? But we saw the Blue Jays went 4-man outfield several times throughout the Major League season. You went 4-man outfield in what? I want to say, I'm just throwing a guess here, 2012 was the first time you probably ran a 4-man outfield.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, it was a really long time ago, and that's something that you were, you not only factored in the mental aspect, the physical aspect, but you really factored in the mental aspect of exposing a hitter to a 4-man outfield. And what kind of goes into that creativity of being able to trust your gut, trust what you're seeing now that you have more information and reports, but also obviously you're not the one calling the shots necessarily. I'm sure you're going to get a lot of creative freedom with that, but coach, what is Coach Mams looking for in terms of like the creativity side of it? Is that something that hey, let's go 4 outfielders because this guy is, 50% in the air and really doesn't hit ground balls to second base, ever. He has 1 hit on the year there, and let's take our chances with that.
Yeah, no, I think, listen, Mams is on the side of the fence. If it's going to help us win ball games, then he'll be open to it. I don't know how often we'll do that necessarily, that type of defensive outfield formation here. Certainly it's worked a little bit in the past. And yeah, that's just what we look for, especially, right-hand hitter that never hits a ground ball to the right side. Has good power numbers, hits a lot of balls in the air. Why are we going to play a guy somewhere where they never hit the baseball to? So, and I do think there's a little bit of a mental factor when a guy gets in the box and looks up and sees a big hole where the second baseman should be playing and 4 guys in the outfield where they're used to finding a lot of their hits. And what I found is a lot of times guys will change their swing and try to do something they're not capable of. They'll try to bunt for a hit, and all that stuff to me was a win.
Success,
when you're talking about trying to take somebody's best hitter out of his game a little bit. So we'll see. I mean, we will shift, we will move some guys around. So I don't know if we'll go that extreme, but time will tell. My guess is if I put my fingerprints on it, at some point it could happen, but we'll see.
I mean, is it a breath of fresh air to see kind of the reports? Because really, I mean, especially probably the first time you went 4-man outfield, it was all gut. I'm guessing it was lack of information in terms of, having the spray charts. Is it comforting for, you to be able to have that concrete information of and, again, if the guy does what you don't expect him to do, sometimes you got to tip your cap and give them the benefit of the doubt. But the reality is that, most times they don't, right?
No, I think having the information is certainly helpful, and I think baseball anymore, even at the big league level, not that you can play out the entire game before it happens, but you have so much information to make decisions prior to the game even starting to be able to put your team in the best position to win. And kind of at each level that you go up, there's more information that you can get. We're going to have Trackman this January going in, and we're going to be able to get more information off of that. Even at other ballparks, because we'll have access to all the Trackman data now. So we'll have more information to make more informed decisions prior to playing. That's the analytics part. The Manalytics part comes into play on game day when, hey, this might be what the numbers show, but at least today against Tyler August, who's throwing 97 miles an hour, he's not as bullish on the ground as he might be against the guy that throws 90, 91. Maybe we're not going to shift as far over. Things like that where it takes a trained eye to kind of look at that and make some of those adjustments. So
100%. And balance is everything, and I think that's in coaching in general. And obviously, like I've said multiple times, we've been able to sit down with Coach Mams, and obviously you've been helping out on the offensive side. And one of kind of the cores of, I guess, would probably be your career at this point is base running, right? Being aggressive on the base pass, a lot of stolen bases, and the most fun offenses to watch are the ones that hit a lot of home runs and steal a lot of bases. That kind of is what gets butts in the seats and eyes on the TV. What are you hoping to bring in a base running element of being able to combine what is, Coach Mams' expertise and then being able to push the nozzle? I know we used to talk about, hey, every guy has to find a way to second base, right? And, as we look at data across levels of baseball, the more you get to second base, the earlier you get to second base, the more runs you score. And it doesn't always have to be with a double if you have guys that can take advantage of some certain things. So what are you hoping to bring in a base running element to this offense?
Yeah, I think it's going to be some advantages at the margins, hopefully. Mams does a great job. He took on the base running this fall. He has a really good philosophy there, and does a great job teaching it, and we work on it, and we do want it to be a bigger part of our game going forward. I think there will be hopefully some things on pitchers that I might be able to pick up as the first base coach, things like that, where I don't know that we're going to go from a 75 stolen base team to a 150 stolen base team, but if we can get an extra 90 a couple times this year,
situation as
spot,
well.
Yep. And help us win a close game. I think that is where hopefully, I can step in and maybe be able to help us, in that area a little bit more. I don't think we're going to be built around it like some of the teams I've coached in the past. We're going to be built a little bit more around the power piece, and that's fine. I've always said it's a lot easier to score runs when you can hit the ball over the fence rather than have to scoot around the bases and try to do it with a bunch of singles or walks or things like that. But if we can take advantage of a free 90 when it's there, that's what we have to be able to do.
So what you're telling me is you're not going to fill out the first base coach's box the same way Keith Curley fills out the first base coach's box, right?
I'll spare the Backside Groundballs listeners on a Keith Curley rant right now, but yes.
The BP top, for all the listeners that know Keith Curley, he always asked for it 2 sizes smaller than what he actually would fit in. That's why it looked so big or so small on him. So that's a little inside baseball behind the Arcadia uniform distribution there. But let's talk a little bit about recruiting. Obviously, that's a huge piece of your role here, and obviously we've talked with Coach Mams about his vision for the program. And, with all of us here, Michael, Dan, and I being local guys, we're pretty passionate about the success of Delaware baseball and obviously building it to what everybody locally envisions it can be. What's the recruiting philosophy for you? And kind of almost like if I'm sitting here as a high school recruit, and what should people know about Delaware baseball and the future of Delaware baseball as you are trying to pitch to a high school junior per se?
Yeah, I think, number one is, like I said at the beginning of the conversation, the University of Delaware and the education and the baseball experience here, I think, is going to be unique, from this point going forward with the change to Conference USA, with Mams' vision for where things are headed. I think there's a lot of positive energy surrounding the program right now. The Conference USA shift, I think, does a lot for us regionally. It sets us apart from a lot of the other mid-majors that are playing more of a regionalized schedule. This part of the country, we're going south consistently now, starting in 2025, 2026. And I think for players in this area, we hear it all the time. They want to go south. They want to go play down south. They want to play where the warm weather is. Well, Delaware is going to be the most northern point of the conference, at that point. So every conference game we play, and presumably non-conference too, because there's no reason for us to go north at that point, we'll be in the warmer weather. So I think that's a big piece of it. I think we didn't come here to be a 500 program and just sneak into the conference tournament. Like, we want to start to make noise and put together seasons where we can play in the NCAA tournament and play in regionals. And I think the conference has a lot to do with that as well. It's not a one-bid league, meaning that, your only shot in isn't just to win the conference tournament. Yeah. If you put together a good resume throughout the course of the season, you have a chance to go play in a regional as a second, third, fourth team in Conference USA and in the CAA, honestly, right now. So, postseason baseball is certainly a possibility. I think facilities here are a big draw for a recruit right now. Bob Hanna Stadium's a great place to call home. Brand new turf, going to be brand new padding around the stadium here pretty shortly. Trackman, play at night when the weather gets better here late in the season. just the support from the university. You guys will see the Whitney Center today in the weight room and some of the places that our guys have to develop, I think are all positive selling points, for a recruit. And then just being here a few months and just seeing the positive experience that our players have, probably the hardest part to show in recruiting, because guys are here such a short time for visits where hopefully it's a day we're practicing, or hopefully it's a day we have a lift where a recruit could come in and see sort of like the action of the program, because we can always tell. I can sit here and tell you till I'm blue in the face how great it is, but I think the overall experience for somebody that wants to get a great education, play high-level Division I baseball, maybe have a chance to get drafted, and just overall enjoy themselves through their 4 years of college baseball, I think this is a great place for somebody that wants to match up all those pieces.
And one of the best higher education universities in the area and the country, quite
Absolutely.
frankly, with phenomenal programs across undergraduate and graduate programs as well. So I'll ask you this question. I asked Coach Mam. So first 5 weekends of the conference series, do you want to go south, or do you want teams from the south to come north? What's your preference? And for you personally?
Interesting. I want them to come up here and play in the cold.
There you go.
I think that would be advantageous for us.
Okay. Yeah.
So
that's a good one there. And obviously we've got a ton more today. We're going to check out the facilities, but I'm sure anybody who listened to this is not the last time Coach Torresani is going to be on the podcast. I think I'd guarantee that. So we got in the weeds a little bit about the transition to the University of Delaware and his role, but we're super excited to get a tour of the facilities, to get to walk around. You guys, thank you, as always, for welcoming us in, opening the door for us, and being able to get behind the scenes with it. I know I speak for everybody who's going to listen to this, as well as all of us here today, that Delaware is in great hands. From speaking with you guys and understanding what your vision is for the future, that I believe that the hands of Delaware baseball are going to be much more positive in the future, and there are going to be way less 500 seasons moving forward, and a lot more conference championships. So I think I speak for everybody there.
Appreciate that.
Of
Go
course.
Hens.
Yep. Perfect. Well, thank you to our listeners. That will conclude the episode for today.